International News Network Global Briefing. This is your structured update on the most important international developments shaping today's security environment. We focus on what has changed, where it is happening, and why it matters, without noise or speculation. Tonight, our main story is Ukraine. Not a single dramatic breakthrough, but a quieter and more consequential shift in how the war is being fought. Pressure is spreading across the front, decisions are becoming harder, and the pace of change is slow but strategic. What is happening is straightforward. Russian forces are applying sustained pressure across multiple sectors at once. Instead of concentrating for one decisive attack, operations are distributed, forcing Ukraine to respond everywhere simultaneously rather than anywhere decisively. Where this is unfolding stretches across eastern and southern Ukraine, from urban defensive belts to rural approaches and logistics corridors. It is not one city or one headline location. It is the entire line, which makes the change less visible but more structurally important. When this shift began is gradual rather than sudden. Over recent weeks, patterns have shown fewer dramatic pushes and more constant friction. That steady tempo limits recovery time, increases fatigue, and slowly erodes defensive flexibility over months instead of days. How this strategy works is logistical, not theatrical. By attacking, probing, and pressuring multiple areas, Ukraine must divide manpower, ammunition, and transport. Even strong positions become vulnerable when supplies and reinforcements cannot move quickly enough between sectors. Why this matters is that wars are often decided by endurance rather than spectacle. Sustained pressure tests not only soldiers, but industry, infrastructure, and political will. It becomes a question of who can maintain support and stability the longest, not who advances fastest. For civilians near the front, this translates into daily uncertainty rather than singular crises. Checkpoints, damaged buildings, disrupted services, and constant alerts form the background of life. It is not one catastrophic moment, but a persistent environment of risk. For Ukraine's leadership, the decision-making becomes sharper. Where do you reinforce? Where do you conserve? Which areas can be held firmly, and which must accept limited risk? Every choice shifts resources away from somewhere else. International support plays a direct role here. Military assistance is not abstract. It affects ammunition stocks, repair cycles, air defense coverage, and the speed at which damaged equipment returns to service. Timing often matters as much as total volume. This connects the battlefield to diplomacy. Delays or uncertainty in aid create operational gaps. Predictable flows create stability. As a result, political negotiations far from the front line can immediately influence conditions on the ground. The consequences extend beyond Ukraine itself. Allies adjust defense spending. NATO refines its posture. Neighboring states review civil defense and preparedness. A prolonged conflict reshapes security planning across Europe and beyond. We are also seeing secondary global effects. Shipping routes, energy flows, and trade insurance costs react to perceived instability. Even countries far from the conflict adapt logistics and supply chains to manage uncertainty linked to regional risk. What makes this moment important is not a headline event, but accumulation. Small changes compound. Slight delays, minor losses, and steady pressure gradually alter the balance. These slow-moving shifts often determine the next phase long before a major announcement appears. So this is not a turning point you can photograph in one frame. It is a process, a steady recalibration of positions, resources, and expectations. Understanding that process is essential to understanding where the war may move next. Looking ahead, two variables stand out: external support and seasonal conditions. Both influence mobility, supply lines, and operational tempo. Together, they will likely shape the coming months more than any single tactical development. If support remains stable and logistics hold, defensive stability improves. If either weakens, pressure compounds. This is why analysts describe the situation not as escalation or collapse, but as a sustained test of resilience on all sides. To understand the current phase, it helps to step back and look at the structure of the war itself. This is no longer a fast-moving campaign. It has evolved into an industrial conflict where production capacity, repair speed, and logistics reliability often matter more than individual tactical gains. In practical terms, this means factories, rail lines, and supply depots have become as important as the front line. Ammunition output, vehicle maintenance, and spare parts determine what commanders can realistically attempt on the battlefield weeks later. Ukraine's strategy has focused heavily on preserving mobility. Rapid redeployment allows smaller forces to stabilize multiple sectors. But that flexibility depends on fuel, intact roads, and secure transport routes, all of which are constantly targeted or disrupted. Russia, by contrast, appears to prioritize volume and persistence. Instead of quick breakthroughs, the aim is to maintain constant pressure, forcing defensive units to remain engaged and preventing large-scale regrouping. The effect is cumulative rather than immediate. This creates what analysts describe as operational fatigue. Units may hold their positions successfully, yet still lose effectiveness over time simply because rest, rotation, and repair become harder to schedule. Even small delays compound over months. Weather also plays a measurable role. Seasonal mud, freezing temperatures, and reduced daylight affect vehicle movement and aerial surveillance. These natural constraints often slow both sides and turn the conflict into a contest of patience rather than speed. Beyond the battlefield, the civilian economy continues to adapt. Power grids, transport hubs, and local industries must function despite disruption. Every successful repair or workaround reduces strategic pressure and increases national resilience. Internationally, governments are watching these indicators closely. Aid packages, training missions, and procurement decisions are increasingly based on sustainability rather than urgency. The question is not what changes today, but what can be maintained for years. This longer time horizon shifts expectations. Instead of predicting decisive victories, planners evaluate gradual advantages, small improvements in air defense, incremental training gains, or steady equipment replacement that collectively reshape the balance. For viewers outside the region, the relevance is practical. Energy prices, food exports, and security commitments are influenced by how stable or unstable this front remains. The conflict quietly shapes economic and political decisions far beyond Europe. So while today may not bring a dramatic headline, the underlying trajectory still matters. Slow structural shifts often determine the future more reliably than sudden events. Recognizing those shifts early helps explain what might happen next. Taken together, the picture is clear. This is a prolonged test of endurance between systems, not just armies. Stability, logistics, and support networks will likely decide outcomes long before any single engagement does. For deeper context and future updates, continue with our next report. And YouTube has also selected another analysis you may want to watch. Thank you for staying informed with International News Network.